Yeah, well, I mean, it'd be nice to see those banks, according to the FDB president, the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank, which he said, I think it's already approved for 2 states, Angola being one of them, and Ethiopia. Those are the 2 states that have those banks, that have the board approval for those banks already. And I mean, expanding it obviously to other parts of Africa would be a welcome idea. Now, back here in Nigeria, well, the economy is a bit uncertain at this time, because we know that the issue of the new minimum wage is still very hot in the burner, and unfortunately Labour and the government have not been able to meet when it comes to how much it should be. That's the new minimum wage. We know that Labour has shifted ground to about half of what they were demanding for, about 250 now. Federal government is saying 62,000 naira. Guess what? The state governments, the state governors are saying that they cannot even afford 60,000 naira. I think they put it about 57,000 naira. Now let's look at some numbers before we delve into what can they really afford, you know. Now let's look at a major source of income for government, state government. Let's focus on the state government today for now. So we see that FAC, for instance, for April was 2.1 trillion naira. Federal government got 390 billion naira. States got 400, and we now have 36 states. They got 403 billion naira. Local governments, that's a conversation for another day. One of these days we'll shine our light on the local government. Local government got 293 billion naira. So apart from this, for the states, we have those oil-producing states. They share 13% derivative revenue, and they had, for this month, for April, they had 120 billion naira. Now, if I may have the next slide to help us see the expenses now. How do they spend their money? That's this state. This is just a general overview. I know that a couple of months ago, we had budgets sharing how much each of the states spends on food, expenses, salaries, and non-salary recurrent expenditure. And I know that made the news then. If you check around, you would see that. Now, 36 states spent 1.71 trillion naira on recurrent expenditure for the first 9 months of last year, 2023. Believe me, even up to now, we don't have the full expenditure, recurrent expenditure of states for 2023. Unfortunately, the issue of data comes back. Now, states' total expenditure is expected to be this total expenditure, and just 1 trillion naira, about 1 trillion naira less than the revenue. So, of course, this is taking into consideration the fact, which we started with, you know, that they get every month, they get 403 billion naira, about that. And then the oil-producing states get 13% derivatives, which, of course, makes it even more. Let's find out, perhaps, if some of this, and, you know, some of these are for food, visitors, travels, and all of that. Perhaps, if this is reduced, can we, or can the states, afford to pay a more agreeable minimum wage, you know, to labor? Well, it's not my say. It's something we'll have to push for. But now let's have the director of Center for Economic Policy Analysis and Research at UNILAG, Professor Ndubuisi, joining us right now for that. Professor Ndubuisi, welcome. Thank you so much, and good morning, sir.
Thank you, Professor Mukoma, on the line. Thank you.
So Professor Mukoma, when you hear state governments saying that they cannot afford to pay 60,000 naira as minimum wage, what comes to your mind? I know you're an economist, so obviously you should think of it as in the impact on the economy, more money in circulation, issue of inflation. But really, what comes to your mind when you heard that statement?
I don't think I agree entirely with the state governors that they cannot pay. They can. It's a matter of trying to realign their fiscal circumstances. Because that's a problem at all levels, at all tiers of government, both the local government, the state and the federal. There's the need for a total realignment of their fiscal circumstances, particularly the area of their expenditure programs. So if they do some adjustments here and there, I believe the states can pay the minimum wage. But the issue now is to determine what the minimum wage will be. Probably as we progress, we'll be able to come to a time what, in my view, it ought to actually be.
think it should be that can be sustainable for both the federal, the state, and of course, the workers?
Yes. Okay, now, if you want to go into what it ought to be, like you said from your preambles, that there's so much money coming in because of the subsidy removal, which took place last year when the president came and announced that subsidy is gone. And of course, they have more money as revenue because of the removal of the subsidy. Now, if you take a look at that, the minimum wage when this government came into office was 30,000 naira. 30,000 naira. And this was set like 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, what was the exchange rate like? It was about 360 naira, thereabouts. That is under President Buhari when the minimum wage was set, about $30,000 naira. And at 360 naira to $1 then, if you want to do some little arithmetic, that comes to about $83 as minimum wage per month. Now, if you take a look at what the exchange rate is now, it's about 1,450 naira to $1 or more. But let's just use 1,450 as a benchmark figure. If you multiply that by $83, you will come to about 124,000 naira. That is what the equivalent of that 30,000 naira of 5 years ago, it would be now if you factor in exchange rate. So definitely, if you're going to pay minimum wage anything less than 124,000 naira, you're actually bringing down the real income of the minimum wage workers, somebody who's at the minimum wage level. Because anything less than that, because the issue is the purchasing power of the money. Because in economics, we have what we call nominal wage against real wage. Nominal income against real income. In nominal terms, if you make it over 30, you can say, yes, there's an increase. But in real terms, if you make it 100,000 naira as minimum wage, it is actually less than 30,000 naira of 5 years ago, in real terms. So definitely, government really needs to take a look at this critically. If you bring in inflation, you could be doing double counting or other variables, but let's just take only one variable, that's the exchange rate. Because every other price has gone up. What is food inflation now is over 40%. So if government is going to enhance the welfare of workers, paying them anything less than 120,000 naira as minimum wage, you're actually bringing down the real income of the worker. So I think we need to take a look at that and factor in all these variables. And government has more money. So what has to happen is that government needs to realign its fiscal circumstances. You can't tell me that government has no money when you have so much money being spent on renovation of the house of the vice president. You can't tell me that government has no money when we can see so much travels going on by political office holders, so much going on at the National Assembly, so much going on with the ministers, and people can see government spending so much money on Hajj operations, and you'd say there's no money to pay minimum wage. In my view, any wage, any minimum wage that is less than 100,000 naira is below the real income of what that person could offer you 5 years ago. So they need to take a look at this figure very critically. Unless the thinking is that the country can only recover economically if the poor man is made worse off. That's the logic. That the poor man must be made worse off before the economy can improve. There's need for government to take a look at the cost of governance. That, in my view, is where the problem is. The cost of governance needs to come down drastically, and that has not happened.
So, Prof, what about this conversation that it doesn't really matter the number, 60,000, 120,000, 250. What matters is making the naira gain value. That way, the purchasing power is strong, even if the number is not so high.
Yes, making the naira gain value, there are two sides for any market, the supply side and the demand side. The supply side is a challenge for Nigeria. We have so much oil theft going on, still going on. we have not been able to oftentimes meet our OPEC quota, the supply side, and the production is not going on. There are dislocations in the supply chain. So we cannot even earn so much money as export proceeds. So that is the supply side of foreign exchange. Then the CBN is trying to jack up the NPR to be able to attract foreign capital. The money you're going to attract usually are hot money, portfolio investments, because they are not coming into an environment to, as FDI. So you want to bring in on the supply side, bring in more foreign exchange to be able to stabilize it. But how possible is that? Any money that comes in now by jacking up your NPR will come in just to do for the returns, and then any little dislocation, it will just go out. So that is on the supply side. It has challenges. Address the issue of oil thefts. Meet up your OPEC quota. Be able to make the environment conducive for production so as to earn export proceeds in dollars. Then the demand side, we have so much demand for foreign currency. The demand for foreign goods is so high. So and a number of times what government is doing is borrowing from Afrexim Bank, borrowing from African Development Bank. How long can you sustain this? Is it sustainable? So bringing down, we all want the government to stabilize the exchange rate. Fine. But do you have enough dollars to sustain that? So these are issues. But until then, any minimum wage that is less than 120 naira, 50,000 naira, in my view, if you are going to get a real income that is less than what 30,000 naira can afford you 5 years ago. So which means people are getting poorer. And unless that happens, so what government is offering is about half of what it ought to be. And I hope they realize this, that the people of Nigeria, many people are really suffering. Poverty is all over the country, and I think government needs to do something about it. And also manage the announcement. That's what we call the announcement effect. They need to do these things quietly and let workers get this increment in a very quiet form, because there's the announcement effect of policy, so that it will not trigger up another round of inflation. These are areas that the Minister of Finance, who is the coordinating Minister of the Economy, needs to really work hard on. Or else we'll just be...
Professor Wakoma, how can that be managed quietly? All eyes are now on, whatever announcement, whatever word, not even sentences, but words, that come out about the minimum wage. Labours are up. We might be going on strike again. So how can they manage it quietly? Because that could come with higher minimum wage.
Yes, they can manage it by making less noise. I think because it has been proven empirically, there's what we call the announcement effect of policy. They need to talk. Government actually need to be more serious, in my view. I don't think they are serious enough. They are still playing hanky-panky. That's my view. Government needs to sit down with labor, quietly agree on what the minimum wage should be, and begin to implement it. Not too much, there's too much noise and less action going on. And that noise is actually working against the workers, against inflation. Government should sit down. Now that we've had this 5-day reprieve, they've called up have been suspended for 5 days, they can now talk when they should quickly get down to discuss and come to an agreement. There was this other rumor that the federal government said they can go with 105,000 naira, which in my view is more realistic, which they denied eventually. It says it's not true. I think if that is actually what happened, they need to really stick with that. It is far from what they are offering. Very, very, very low. It's about half of what it ought to be to maintain the real income of 5 years ago. So government should work on the supply side of foreign exchange, manage the demand side, and then see how we can bring down the exchange rate. Until then, any rate below 120, in my view, will not work in the interest of workers.
Yeah, I'm sure the state governors would was saying that, Prof, because they say they can't even afford more than 57,000. I think that even some people are still owing 30,000 naira as we speak, unfortunately, in the state. Well, we have to thank you so much, Professor Ndubisi Nwokoma, the director of